Pregame.com.
Nebraska at Michigan. Not going to go to the NFL for my best bet. Staying in the college this week. Michigan opened 2.5, 50.5. They're now up to 3.5 and 51. Through that key number of 3. But that's not going to scare me off this game. I absolutely love Michigan in this spot. This is the perfect example of an overrated team versus an underrated team. Let me explain. Both are 8-2 straight up. Both are 4-2 in conference. And yet, when you look at the ATS mark, you have Michigan, who's 7-3, and you have Nebraska, who's 3-6-1, or more or less 3-7. That, to me, tells me Nebraska's been overrated as far as the odds makers' numbers go, and Michigan's been underrated as far as the lines go. BCS has Michigan 18th and Nebraska 16th. Based on my ratings, and if you go to vegasrankings.com, I submit mine with a bunch of other odds makers and bookmakers, and RJ compiles them and puts out the consensus. I have it the other way around. I have Nebraska 19th and Michigan 17th. Not a big difference, but the fact is I have Michigan as the better team. Now couple that with home field advantage, and I think they have a pretty strong home field. I give them 4 at the Big House. This line to me should be much closer to 5 where it's heading. At 2.5, I'd have absolutely unloaded. I'd still be betting it. But at 3.5, I think it still warrants a best bet. Once the public gets involved, and they will be betting Nebraska, I think we'll be able to buy that hook down to 3 and really get some value on this game. Like I said, pollsters got this one wrong. Michigan's the better team, and more importantly, they're underrated, and they are 6-0 at home this year, 5-1 against the spread. I see them winning this game. Tell me why I'm wrong.
We're supposed to keep this under like 5 minutes, so I'll just hit on some highlights here. Now, your situation about the team spread records makes a lot of sense. Coming into the season, Nebraska was supposed to contend for a Big Ten title.
They were -4 for this game.
Yeah,
at the Golden Nugget.
Tell me about it. And I've got a lot of great numbers at the Golden Nugget. I've got Nebraska -2 in this game. But I also took Nebraska +3 earlier. So not only did I bet Nebraska twice, I bet into bad numbers. I could have had the 4 now with Nebraska.
So you like Nebraska?
I like Nebraska in this game, and to be honest with you, I'm not impressed by Michigan. They're 6-0 at home. Their first 5 games they win: Western Michigan, Eastern Michigan, San Diego State, Minnesota, Purdue. Tough games. The one game that they have won this year, Notre Dame, they needed a +2 turnover margin and a final miracle drive in the last seconds of the game. The other good team they played, Michigan State. Never in that game. They lost that game completely.
I love Michigan State in that game.
So it's not that I think Nebraska is a great team. I just think Michigan still has not impressed me at all. And when you take a look at Nebraska, the 2 games they lost this year were to Wisconsin and Northwestern, two teams who have really good passing attacks. Michigan doesn't have a really good passing attack. And Pelini, on the road, 11-6-1 against the spread. So since he's been there, this has been a team that's performed very well on the road. We were both on Penn State last week.
Correct.
In my opinion, we got lucky to push that game.
Yeah.
So it's a situation where we were looking at that game last week and we thought that Nebraska was a little bit overrated, but I kind of bought into them in that situation because of it. And even though I've got those numbers on Nebraska, I'm not going to bet against it now and take the bad number with Michigan to try to get off my bet. Number one, I don't want to get middled.
Right.
And number two, I still think I have the right side.
You got a good shot. I just think that last week's game for Nebraska was as emotional for them as it was for Penn State, the players. Obviously, it's more intense for the Penn State players because what they went through all week. But it was an emotional game for Nebraska. They had to go in the middle of all that mayhem. There was a lot leading up to that game. You know, do they need security? You know, I mean, just all kind of things that these college kids and even pro athletes wouldn't be used to that environment. I mean, it was a situation which nobody has any history of, you know, and they performed well. I think it was the more that Penn State was tentative early on. I agree with what Joe Paterno said. The only thing I agree with what he said was when he was watching the game, he said they seemed very tentative early on, like almost, nervous. And I think that's exactly what happened to them, and they fell behind, but eventually, instinct and more or less what you're trained to do takes over. All the outside factors disappear, and you just play football. I think once they started realizing they're just playing football, Penn State looked a lot better than they did early on. I just don't think Nebraska, after going through that and holding on and getting that win, now all of a sudden you got to get back up and get ready to go into the big house. And this is a huge game for Michigan. I mean, it's a big game for Nebraska, don't get me wrong. But this to me just looks like a statement game for Michigan. Their defense is out of this world. I think they're one of the top defenses.
Really?
I really do.
And who's the offenses they have played?
Their offense averages 32 points a game. Their defense, 15.5 they allow over the season. 10.8 points per game at home they allow. Yards per point, 29.1. You got to travel 30 yards on this team to get a point. That's as good as it gets in my book.
Do we need to go over the teams they have played again?
Irrelevant.
Look at the teams that they avoided. They have not played Ohio State yet, and Ohio State's not very good, number one. They haven't played Nebraska yet. They do not play Penn State. They've lived off of playing the weaklings of the Big Ten. So I'm not overly impressed with this Michigan team. And you made a lot of great points about the Nebraska situation. But I will add, maybe Penn State was a little nervous to start the game, but Nebraska had a big lead and was just trying to grind out the clock to get the hell out of there last week.
Of course.
So, like I said, we were very lucky to get that push on the three at the end. But you don't like the Nebraska team. You like the Michigan team. I'm not convinced with Nebraska, but I don't like this.
You don't believe in Michigan.
I don't believe in the Michigan team.
I got you.
They only, like I said, they only played two decent teams all year. One was a miracle cover, and the other one they got outplayed the entire game.
And I agree. Denard Robinson's not going to beat you with his arm.
Right.
I agree with that totally. I just, based on my line, I just saw line value, especially when it opened 2.5, because I had it, like I said, 4.75, almost 5-point favorite. And then when I saw that sharp money came in behind it, it convinced me a little more I was on the right side. And knowing so far that nobody that I have access to is looking to buy back and middle that number 3 tells me they think they got the right side as well. So we're going to see that. I'm going to stick to the best bet. You came close to telling me, making me push it towards college, towards the NFL. Haven't had too much success when I go opposite of Brian. So maybe I'm due with Michigan Wolverines on Saturday. Don't forget, go to pregamevideos.com. All the videos will be in one thread. All our notes from the videos, as well as conversation. Let us know if you agree, if you disagree, and why. We'll be back. NFL, 2 great games we're covering. I can't wait to find out who he likes on his games, because I have an opinion on it, which is rare.